So now, why do men deserve less? Tell us, Andrea.
How much time do we have?
We have a good amount of time. We have some
Well,
time.
The reason why, and when I say men deserve less, I'm being serious, but I'm also joking. But I'm just so serious. What I really am saying is why women deserve more. And I love to, like, that's the other thing that is, I'm really passionate about talking about in my work is the dynamics between the sexes. You know, there's all this conversation around the masculine and the feminine, polarity, and like the masculine leads and the feminine is receptive and surrenders and da-da-da-da-da-da, which I think that's bullshit. The feminine leads. But
why does the feminine lead?
Well, because the feminine is the creative force. Like everything that the masculine does is in response to
I knew
the
that. I
consciousness
just wanted
of
you to
it.
explain it.
Yeah, of course. But I'm happy to, because you hear that all the time of like, well, the man is supposed to lead you or the masculine is supposed to lead. But that's not the way. When you look at just the way that energy operates, it's the feminine that goes first, always. And the masculine responds to what the feminine desires. So how can you say if he's responding to what it is that I desire, he might be taking that first action, but he's taking that action based off of the blueprint that I set for him. And so that's what I mean when I say that it's the feminine that leads, even in terms of like, on an individual basis, because, you know, we all have masculine and feminine energy within us. Like if you decide, well, I'm going to go to the kitchen and make a sandwich, like the action of making the sandwich is masculine, but it is the thought, the desire for the sandwich that drove you to go and make it. Which led in that aspect. It was the thought, the creative principle, which is what drove that inspired action, which is that masculine energy. And so to me, it's just ultimately what it comes down to is it's got to make sense. Like it's just got to make sense. It's got to be logical. And I think that a lot of what people, a lot of the way a lot of these things are interpreted are, in my opinion, very illogical. And so for going back to the original question of like, why do men deserve less? And conversely, why women deserve more is it's quite illogical the ways in which women basically prostrate themselves at the feet of people that have shown them over and over and over and over again. And of course, I'm speaking very generally here.
Yes.
These are experiences that most women are having. And so this idea that you are beneath this person and your entire identity being based on this idea of you being beneath your counterpart, and then basically making decisions in your life that are completely contradictory to what you're designed to do, it just doesn't make any sense. And so the idea of men deserving less, it's really about being very, very clear about the fact that you are the resource. You are what is being desired, and you have the power of choice. It's the women who choose. It is the women who decide who gets access to them when they're embodied, when they're conscious. And so the concept of men deserving less, it's about making sure that you're not giving access to you to men who are not worthy of being in your presence, who are not worthy of entering your temple. And most men are not worthy of having access to you. And this is reflected in nature. And I love talking about nature.
Please do. Keep going.
Yeah, because we often as humans, we look at nature as such a really beautiful reflection because nature operates in alignment.
And in harmony.
In harmony, unless we disrupt it.
Yes.
Unless we disrupt it. So like one example of like a disruption of nature that people pretend is actually the way that energy operates is like the concept of the alpha, right? Like the concept of the alpha male, which is not accurate at all. Like the idea of the alpha male comes from a study of wolves that were actually being held in captivity. And we know that the way that animals operate is very different when they're in captivity. They go against their actual nature. And so
why is that? Do you know?
Well, I mean, any person, like even if you put a person in a cage, they're going to revert to very, very low and like shadow-esque forms of behavior because they're basically confined into a place where they're not able to expand in a way that's natural for their spirit. And so you're not going to get an accurate representation of how that energy is meant to flow when you're doing a study in a completely artificial environment where this subject is imprisoned essentially. And so, so like you have all these men talking about like the alpha male. I'm like, you guys are basing this off of a study that is completely unnatural and inaccurate. It's just funny to me. But nature, like true nature, most animal species are matriarchal. They're run by the female. And so the lionesses of the pride, the elephants, birds, I mean, all of these different sectors of the animal kingdom, they kind of like are reflecting to us how things are designed to operate. And when we look at the state of the world, we say that this is human nature. It's like, no, this isn't human nature. We're not designed to be in wars and having mass and like, I mean, the sheer number of children that are abused is beyond comprehension. It's like, it's the most depraved, demonic thing that we're experiencing in this planet is the predation, like the predation on children. And so, and that causes dissociative behavior, that fractures the psyche, that fractures the spirit. And so many of these after effects that we see in the world are the effect or the after effect of very, very unnatural catalysts.
Yeah.
And so
Those are typically the people I end up working with.
right. I mean, and like, I don't, it's hard for me. Like when I think about all of the women in my life, I know very few that have not experienced some sort of abuse.
Same.
Maybe not as a child, but
in some way throughout their history.
Exactly.
Yeah. Either through a lover or on the street or in the back seat of a cab.
Right.
Or, yeah.
Absolutely.
Someone's taken advantage of them at some point.
Right.
And taking advantage of the fact that we are not as physically strong.
Yeah. It's honestly, I've gone through, I wouldn't be able to, I don't think I'd be able to share what I share right now if I hadn't gone through the, like the grief cycle, because I remember having a phase of just like pure rage where I was just angry all the time. I had a lot of anxiety. I remember feeling trapped. Like when I started really learning the history of the creation of patriarchy, when I started learning about the matriarchal civilizations, when I started learning about the millennia of like very direct and concerted effort to completely invert nature as a means for controlling the entire population, not just women, men as well, it made me, I was like sick to my stomach. I was sick to my stomach over it. And thankfully, I've been able to process through that and get to a place of acceptance and just recognizing that me learning all of this was so intentional in my purpose of being able to share that with other people, developing the tools to not cope, but to heal and come together and build sort of like a coalition, a collective of people who are choosing to consciously create something different, or what some people might call the new world or new earth. Or but yeah, so to again, like why men deserve less, it's really about women recognizing the truth of who we are and how powerful we are, and that the reason why there's such immense attraction to us on the part of men is because of that creative power that we have, and that not everybody is allowed access to that. And nature is a really beautiful example, because you watch how females do not let mediocre males mate with them. Like they don't deserve access. And really looking to nature, like the females in nature, they recognize that only the best of the best deserve to have access to them, and they're not going to mate with a lesser male. He has to prove himself worthy to have access.
Like a peacock.
A peacock, the birds of paradise, lionesses. I mean, these are like, when we look at these animals, like they understand, because they also, when you just break down, like get rid of consciousness and just get to like the bare bones, like creative, regenerative aspect of nature, just like really the desire to propagate oneself, right? You want to do that with the best genes possible. You want to eliminate anything that is going to bring illness or weakness or genetic disorder into the bloodline. And so making sure that the males are the creme de la creme ensures that you're bringing forth offspring that are also going to be able to continue to evolve and create bloodlines where there's more like genetic diversity as well as just more greatness in the genetic bloodline. So just on like a basic fundamental nature level. But then from a consciousness level, it's women have a responsibility, in my opinion, to, because again, we're bringing through the consciousness through our womb, through the types of people that we're bringing into the world. So if you want to build a better world, you have to be birthing people from a higher level of consciousness. And if you're not doing that, then we're responsible as women for what's being created and manifested into the physical. We're unconscious of it, but that doesn't negate our responsibility.